All right, so I'll just be sharing the screen in a minute. Is the screen visible to everyone?
Yes.
All right, great. So, yes, as I was saying, so today for the rendering, we'll be focusing on some general thumb rules and good practices. Basically, we'll be focusing on some shortcut settings for making your interior renders. And to serve as a reference, I will be using this kitchen render that has been generated by Infurnia. So, as you can see, there are several materials being used here. There are solid laminates and rough grain textures. There are also other materials like metallic metallic profiles, lights, etc. And also some glossy laminates as well being used in some of the elements of this design. So there are different lights also used. We are using normal ceiling point lights, spotlights, and also cabinet strip lights. So what we'll be doing today is that I'll be demonstrating the settings we have used for this kitchen, that I've used for this kitchen, and also for this daylighting that I've gotten for this room. And you can directly note down these settings and you actually use it as a reference for your future renders as well. So just a small point. Today we are going to be focusing only on interior renders and rather than focusing on how to put the lights, etc., except for a few exceptions, we are just going to be focusing on what are the settings we use for each element of this. Because there's a lot of confusion in that. There seems to be a lot of confusion in that, and especially when we're trying to get realistic renders. So at the end of the webinar, this flow will be open to questions. So in case of any doubts, please note down and reserve your queries for the end. With that we can begin the webinar. So this is the design that was used to create this sort of render. And one of the most common problems is that when one generates their first render, supposing they will put some materials just as a placeholder, and many of you may be using the wall default to place the colors on the walls, ceilings, etc. And what happens is that when we run the render, our first render might end up looking something like this, rather yellow, and some of the materials might be too shiny. So actually, even before setting the lightings, etc., setting the different types of lights, etc., to ensure we have a more realistic render, it goes right down to the material choice itself. So for a more realistic render, if you can see here, we need to choose more. We should preferably choose more analogous colors, which means I'll just show as an example for this. So by analogous colors, what I mean is most of your colors when you're using in a render, it should either stay within a warm palette or a cool palette. So in this particular case, supposing my cabinets are a grain color, which means I have made sure that even the ceilings and the walls, etc., and even the flooring have taken on either neutral or cooler shades. I can even demonstrate more examples of this. Like supposing this is a very neutral example, we are using very neutral colors. So I'll just show some of the renders that were run here, which have used more colorful examples. So let's take supposing this kitchen render, for example. So you can see that the majority of the colors used here, it's very cool colors like blue, and the white is also very pure, like cool shade of white. And the flooring used is like a cool gray. So the only thing that looks like it is almost not part of the design may be this cabinet, this orange color cabinet on the right side. But the rest looks like it is part of the render. Similarly, if you want to use brighter colors, for example, then we can even use this as an example. So you can see in this case, we are using several different colors, like we are using orange. Here also we are using blue, but the difference is this is a warmer shade of blue. and even the reds and the oranges used. So these are all falling within a warmer palette. Same with this yellow marble, and that is why this render works. So it actually helps to get a reference for different materials and how they can work together, so that the renders don't look like the elements are clashing with each other. So, for example, if you are using a even if you want to use something like red, for example, it's available in different shades. We have both warm and cool shades for it. So, so preferably, we in a situation like this, suppose I'm using only cool palettes here, then maybe if you're using any colors outside of that, like for example there's this apple, etc., then we should only use it sparingly or in very few or smaller elements, so that will make the design pop. So that is one aspect when you're choosing the materials. So I can demonstrate this here. So this is a bare design, and we're just creating the flooring here. So it goes right down to the materials here. So in this case, this is light wood, but it's a warmer color and doesn't seem to be going much with these gray cabinets. So what we are doing is we are going to select from this material a different color itself. So cypress wood was something that I had already. You can even get this from your fetch from store. You can explore these kind of materials and search for one that goes in terms of color. And in a similar way, right now, if I go to the materials and I choose, if I check the color for this is wall default. So basically for this would actually give you a yellowish render. So if you want to change the color, you need to select here and preferably choose a whiter color, maybe a cool color like this, and apply this to all your instances. Now you can automatically see that the colors are not clashing. And even this material that has been applied here, it'll not reflect as a yellow shade which is washing over your gray cabinets. And of course, you can apply this shade for your wall as well, like a cooler version of your wooden texture. So in that vein, so when we are assigning white color, so we should be mindful of the walls and the ceiling material. So many of you may be getting yellow color renders, mainly because when we select this wall here, and we take a look at the materials that appear first, we'd be getting something like, we'd be getting something, for example, wall default. When we open fetch from store, we open wall texture, and then we'd be getting in paint something like these three different wall defaults. So this is fine for when you are generating a nice, you're generating warmer colors in your render, but these would actually give off a yellowish tint. So in this situation, it would be better if you assigned a white material for this. So where do we find this white material? Actually, in our paint sections, you'll not get this. So what you can do is, so if you type white here, all of these colors will actually give you a yellowish tint. So what we do is we can go to wall texture, we can open this and we can choose from the laminates. A go to color for white renders, for cool white renders is if you go to your solid and then you can choose an arctic white material, or you can actually choose a gray color material as well. So in this case, what I have used is in this final design is I have used a gray stone gloss, and in the ceiling I have actually used arctic white, so that you get this kind of reflection here. If you are using wall default, for example, you would be getting these yellow shades no matter what color you give your lights. So that is a very important thing to consider when you're choosing your materials. So it starts from there itself. In addition to this, you may also notice that I have used many different textures. So try to avoid using flat colors for all the surfaces in your design. If you notice here, I have only applied a flat surface or a solid color only for my cabinets. and also for my ceilings and walls, maybe. But to make it more realistic and to make it more dynamic, I would suggest alternating some of the surfaces with texture, like a rough texture. This will actually set off your design and it'll create a contrast. So, and it will make your design look, of course, more realistic. It'll be because of the balance. So, for example, if I go to this pre-settings, if I go to this design, and let's say I'm applying this wood wood finish here. So I select wall default, I click on fetch from store, and I want a wood color, so I go for veneer. So of course you can choose a nice wood color that will actually go with the design and will not clash with the palette. So I'll just go for Siberian oak. If it's not here, I can actually check here itself. So this is what I had picked. So it's just an example. So you can of course use other materials as well, but it's advisable that you create this kind of a contrast. So similarly, if your cabinets are having a wood grain texture, then maybe the rest of your surfaces can be relatively flat or solid. That is one thing. So coming to coming to the material specs, so I'll just show the different material specs that I used for this render. So you can see I've used several. So I've used a solid laminate. Here I've used the same color, but I've used a slightly glossy version of this. I have used wooden textures, rough wooden textures, so that no light reflects from it. And on top of that, I have also used some metal works, like some metal materials to create a shine in the profiles and set off some highlights in the design. So I'll just show the material specs for this. So let's start with the solid laminates. Now in this particular design, what I had done was, if I go to shutter here, this is this I'd use a material called gray stone. For this, I've used laminates for this kind of a finish. So these laminates you can use on any surface, not just your cabinets, as long as the material is proper. So I think gray stone was what I'd used here. It would be actually in your RL finishes, maybe gray stone. Stone. So when you go to check your material palettes, to check which material properties you have for each type of material you have used, you need to go to your global preferences settings, select the materials icon here and click on the picker tool. What happens now is you can see that you have the details of this. This is called gray stone. For the laminates, what I'd used is a dark gray. So you can see here that for these kind of finishes, for this kind of solid finish, you should ideally be going for a specular of zero point 0.3. And so specular means glossiness. Roughness is there. Roughness is basically how rough the material is, and metalness is the metallic luster. So by default, you will be getting this for most of your laminates anyway. So this you can keep this as the settings if you want this kind of effect. So you can note it down if you want. So 0.3 for your glossiness or specular, and roughness will be around 0.4. When you set all this, you can go ahead and apply to all the instances that are using this color. The same applies for this. However, now if I wanted to create the same color, so for here also I've used a laminate actually, if I select this. So this is for this wall, which is this glossy wall. Unlike these cabinets, it is exhibiting a slightly glossy material, but not very so. For this, you can use a specular of around 0.5 or more than 0.4 to 0.7. And in order to make it not completely smooth, I have made the roughness to be 0.2. If you want it to be extremely glossy, then you can bring specular all the way to 1, and you can bring roughness all the way to 0. But as of now, this is what I'll be keeping. So this is what I have used for this. Once you're done, you can select apply to all instances. So this is for solid laminates and semi-glossy wall. Now to exhibit the kind of effect you're getting in your wooden textures. So it's important that wooden textures, unless highly polished, it should be rough. It should exhibit some sort of texture. It should not look like it's just a glass that we have put on top of it. So for this, it'll be slightly different. By default, the settings for this will be the same as this, but we need to change that. So once again, we go here, we select this, and when we pick on this material here, you can see that I have made it a specular of 0, that is a 0 glossiness, and a roughness of 1. In your pre-settings, if I did the same thing, you'd be getting this by default, but you are to get that kind of effect, to get a rough effect, better to keep it at 0 and keep it the roughness at 1. The rest you can leave as is. Just to clarify, so these are just to kind of help you with what kind of effects you want. You can absolutely use high specularity or high reflectivity for this if you want to. But otherwise, it's just to help you understand what kind of effects you'll be getting if you use certain settings. And on top of that, if you want to maybe expand this wood material, if you want the grain to be larger, then you can once again open the properties for this, and you can see under texture here, there is width and height fields. So you can change that. You can change the scale of this map, the texture map, and it will reflect in your design as well. So when you apply this, you can see that it is getting a bit stretched. So that is how you can actually even change the size of your material. So now that we have covered solid laminates, we have covered semi-glossy wall, we have covered wooden textures on floor and wall. Also, another thing you can consider that maybe in this wall, you may notice I've applied a glossy material, but many of you may not want that. So I'd advise using the same properties on the wall as you're using on these wooden grains. Basically, a roughness of 1 and the specular is absolutely 0. This is to avoid any sort of light reflecting on it. So you'll not see any of these annoying light spots that are turning up in your walls. This is something you should be making rough if you don't want that to happen. But since in this case it's a design choice to make the reflection happen, I have edited accordingly. Now in your final design, or apart from these particular things, so we have these handles as well. So of course, you might want to look into changing the handles also if need be, just to improve the design, but it's up to you. Now supposing for this I have applied gola profile handles, and I want to change the material for this. So of course, once I have selected this and apply the gola material, I want to create that sort of metallic luster I am getting here. So what I've done is, if I select the shutter and I click on this shutter and if I select this change handle option, you can see that I've actually used an anodized silver handle in the J profile. But when you open the material settings for this, you should ensure that your glossiness is 1 So that will be extremely smooth. Your roughness is kept at 0 and your metalness is kept at 1. So metalness will actually help you improve the metallic luster of this instead of just looking like a glossy laminate like this wall is looking like. So it'll also have that extra shine to it. So that is how these are the settings you can consider if you want like very shiny metal, very shiny, very smooth metal. We also can consider the other aspect of metallicity. So unlike this, if you were to look at these cabinet frames, the frames used for these cabinets, you can see that it's not as shiny, it's not very smooth, but there is a certain metallic luster to it. So that's another effect of metallic luster. That is, if you don't put the specular property, but you only put metallicity, which means you can check out this particular properties for this particular frame I've used. I've used a chocolate brown frame from the material PU materials. And for this, I've put the specular as 0. So it'll only be metallic. It'll neither be very smooth nor very rough, but the metalness is 1 in this case. And lastly, for the material part, before I proceed to placing different kinds of light and what settings we should consider. So for plain glass that I've used here, you can, if you want, you can keep the metalness at zero point 0.8 and keep your now there's another aspect of this. In refraction, if you open here, you can see two properties called refractive index and transmission. So for creating a reflective look, you can keep your metalness at zero point 0.8 and your transmission at zero point 0.2. And there's another option for called opacity. Now for very plain glass, your opacity needs to be 0, which means your light will completely go through it. This is for very clear glass. And depending on the tint of glass, you can even change this anywhere between zero point 0.1 to zero point 0.9, depending on how much tint you want to the glass. But for very transparent glass, opacity of 0 is required. So for this, these two are optional to keep, metalness and transmission. You can leave it as is, but your opacity needs to be less than 1. For clear glass, it should be absolutely 0. So those are the go-to settings for your materials. Hopefully, you have noted it down. You can also check with me at the end of this session. So what are the go-tos for that? Now, another aspect of this is you can see that I have placed some ceiling lights here as well as some spotlights.
Excuse me,
Yes,
Joanna, could you just repeat that, what you said for the glass again, please? The
yes,
settings
yes.
for glass.
Yes. So
Thank you.
if we check the properties for glass, so this is, since I'm using a very clear glass, that means the opacity here ensure that is at 0, which means it is completely transparent. So supposing if this base color is, let's say, black in color, and you want a black tinted glass, I'll just show this example here. If you wanted a black tinted glass and you changed it to black here, and in the opacity, if you had changed the tint here to like 0.3, for example, then in the renders, this would actually show up as black. However, since this is a clear glass, as is shown here, that means you can keep your opacity to be 0. So that was what I wanted to say about the plain glass.
Thank you.
Sure thing. So yes, so this is about materials. Now let us go on to the light, setting up lights, different types of lights. Also, I wanted to mention another thing. So you may have noticed that this render is looking very bare. It is always helpful to add as many materials as many props and accessories as you can to your counters and to your inside of your cabinets to make it more lively. Just to run it through with anyone who is unfamiliar with how to do that, I have left this cabinet open. So how to add these kind of accessories is you need to select inside the partition of this cabinet, select the correct partition tab sticking on the left hand panel, and then click on the customize icon and select other accessories. Now, when you open this drop down menu here, you can see many categories for the things you can add to this. Let's say I want to add a few bottles or even kitchen props, you can select maybe. And I want to add condiment sets. So I can just select any of these, it'll get added to your cabinet. Now, the problem with this is that if you can even change the placement as well as the size of this. But for that, you need to select this and always ensure that you select furniture light unit. Don't keep this at cabinet or else you're going to get cabinet related properties. You have to select the furniture slash light unit, which means this will now be highlighted in orange, and you can edit this. So now you'll open these dimensions over here. So we have the dimensions, overall dimensions for this. So if I selected maintain aspect ratio here and I change the height to be, let's say, 315 and press enter. Now this has proportionally increased in size, and the position you can also shift it backwards. So let's say in Z axis, I'm going to type in 0. So now it's going to be pushed back. So you can type in any value that you want. And relative to this reference in the partition, it can be moved. You can do the same for your X and Y axis as well. You can even rotate this particular furniture piece, but always ensure that you're selected on the correct tab. So the different levels. So of course, you can add more than one accessory inside this cabinet. So if again you select this, click on partition, customize, again select add. So we have existing other accessories as well, but you can add another. So when I do that, then you can maybe add a bottle, let's say. You can select miscellaneous and select others. And now, of course, this bottle will be added. This also you can change its relative position. So in Z axis, maybe I can put a 0. And X axis, I can place at perhaps 200. So now it'll be placed within this cabinet, this partition. This is how you can add different things to even your countertops, your rack, etc. And you can do the same thing with the rest of the spaces inside as well. Having said that, so now we are done with the materials. We have established the case for materials and we have established the case for the making the space more lively. Now let's talk about lights. So you can see there are like four types of lights used, in fact, if not five. So one is, of course, the invisible, the point lights, the ceiling lights that I've used, which a lot of you may be familiar with, which I've used to illuminate the space. Now, the visible lights I've used here are I've used the spotlights, which are showing here. I have used strip lights in the cabinets. I have used this ceiling, this cove light I have used using emissive slab, which I will explain as we go on further. And in addition to these artificial lights, I have also manipulated the daylight in such a way that the light is falling towards the cabinets and is falling in this way. So how do we get such an effect? So let's go start with the ceiling lights first. Those are the most important. Those are the basic components of editing your lights. So as you can see here, when you go to this final design and you go to your floor plan, a lot of you may be wondering what is the intensity of what is the correct intensity of your strip light, no, correct intensity of your ceiling lights to use and how many should be using. So what I'd suggest for this is, so that would obviously lead to a lot of confusion, especially when it comes to wondering about how to edit the intensity for these two light sources. So we have figured out a very easy way that you can get around this. So the answer is do not worry at all about the light sources and how to change the position or add more into this fixture, etc. This is what we're going to keep constant. So as you can see, the default settings for your ceiling lights are done in such a way that two light sources are placed here. And if you click on lights here, you can see that, just for your reference, you can see there are two light sources here, light 0 of intensity 2 and light 1 of an intensity of 1. And placing the correct number of these fixtures will ensure that your room is illuminated properly. So now what we'll focus on is how many of these lights to place, and more importantly, at what spacing we should place them. Now, if you were to take a look at this render, right, we need to ensure that whatever lights are coming here on the wall are intentional. It's not because of the ceiling point lights that I've added. It's because of the spotlights. The ceiling lights, there should not be any unsightly spots on this wall. There shouldn't be any of these lights. It should be evenly, and it should be diffuse lights. So how do we make sure of that? We should ensure that the correct spacing from the ceiling light to any surface that's nearby is at least 1000 mm. It should be at least 1 meter away from that surface so that it doesn't get reflected on the wall. And apart from that, even the spacing between the two ceiling point lights should be 1000 mm. That's a minimum. So in your pre-settings, how we can actually plan this is when we go to a floor plan, let's go to our ground floor for this, and we can do some light planning for this. So for in this case, we have the nearest surface here are these cabinets. Then we have these two walls, and then we have this wall over here. So we need to make sure that whatever the case is, the lights should be 1 meter at least away from these surfaces. And that's how we plan them. So what we can do is we can go to a floor plan. We can select the draw tab and we can create XY lines. We can create a grid of 1000 into 1000 mm, 1 meter grids. So we select this construction line. So this is just to actually help you with creating the lights, help you with where to place the lights. So I select construction here and I just draw a line. I click on one point and click on another in a similar manner. And notice how I'm starting from the upper cabinets instead of this wall, because I'm taking this upper cabinets as a surface starting. And the same way I'm doing with this wall because this is the nearest surface. So to create this grid, we select this and we go to architecture and we select copy. Then in mode, we select copy, fixed copy, multiply straight at a fixed distance because we are going to array this now. And we keep this at 1000 at least. It can be more than that, but don't keep it at less than that. Then I click on this line, and as I move my mouse down, you can see the grid is being formed. And you can press escape. And in a similar manner, if I click on this, copy and fixed distance 1000, click on this line, and now you'll be getting a grid. Right now the false ceiling is switched on. I'll just go down and disable this reflected ceiling plan. So now you can see 1000 mm away from each other. So these intersections are where you can actually place your lights. So we can do that. So we can select insert, select furnish, select lights, sorry, and we can go with our normal ceiling light number 3. This is what I basically use. And before you copy these lights, always ensure that it is at the correct place, which means when I go to select room, when I go to my kitchen view, I don't want the ceiling light to be a drop away from here. Like here, you can see it's actually not touching the ceiling. So you're finding these not really good looking shadows. Always ensure that it's touching here. So how we can make sure of that is, so if I go to my preview settings, this ceiling is, you can select the ceiling and you can see that this is 2850 mm above the ground level. When I click on this light fixture, this is less than that. It is 2677. So what I can do is I can type in 2830. Now you can see it is actually touching the ceiling. So this is how you can make sure. Always you can click on the ceiling, check its elevation, and make sure that your light position is that much itself. So it's almost 13 height. So this is an appropriate height for this. It will be touching the ceiling. Once that is done, when you select when you open the lights menu for this, go to customize, open the lights menu. You do not need to worry about all of this. It'll create confusion. Just worry about the number of lights you have. And of course, if you want, you can change the color, but preferably keep it at white unless absolutely specified. So keeping it white will also help with the realistic renders. So now that you see all this, you can see your intersections here. What is the thumb rule number of lights you can keep? So you can see in this case, the number is 9. So that is how you can determine how many lights you can place. So of course, once you do that, you can go ahead and array these lights. You can type in copy. This is a shortcut. I'm typing in copy. Select this. Click on multiplied fixed copy. And I'm creating 2 more copies here. Now I click on this base point, which is the center of this light, and I move my mouse in this direction. You can see that 19, it's being equally formed. I click once and these lights have been placed. In a similar manner, if I select these lights, I am pressing shift and selecting them. Once again, I'm typing array and I'm going to copy this row 2 more times. I'm keeping it 2. And I've done it here as well. So now you're getting 9 lights are required to illuminate the space appropriately. So it'll neither be too bright or too dark. It'll give that a good amount of light. The rest is up to your discretion, but this is the thumb rules that you can follow for most of you. So once you have ensured that they touch the ceiling surface, which is the case because I've done this for one and copied all of them. And we also established that to avoid any confusion, we should not edit these light sources. So another hack that you can consider is, so let's suppose you want only the light. You just want the light, but you don't want any of the fixtures to show. You can see that in my final design, I've actually buried some of these lights are missing. But in the floor plan, if you look, these lights are still there. What I've done is, I've basically just moved the lights slightly upwards so that they go just into the ceiling. But somehow the light is still there. I'll just show an example. So in this case, there are no ceiling lights. There are no ceiling fixtures that you can see. And if I show you the renders that I had run for this, you can see that in this case, there are no ceiling lights seeming to be visible. But if you scroll further down, you can see that in this case, the lights were there. So how did I get rid of them and why does it still look the same? Reason being is that the light sources will still remain. It will still be within this room. I'll just show an example. I'll go to your presettings. I'll go to the presettings and I'm just going to move this slightly above. I'll make this 2860. So now it's disappeared into the ceiling. I'm going to do the same for the rest. So now when I go to floor plan, you can see the lights are still there, of course. But when I go to 3D, you can see that the light sources are still here. And of course, these sources are actually what are responsible for creating the illumination inside the room. So you can keep that in mind. If you don't want any fixtures to be visible, you can just move it slightly upwards, which means it won't be shifted that much and these light sources will stay in almost the same position. So as that is clear, I guess, in terms of the ceiling point lights. So another thing I wanted to point out that this is regarding the point lights itself. You can see that the type of light I've used is point lights. So these point lights are the main thing, the main elements that are responsible for illuminating the space. Now, once that is done, once you have done putting these type of lights, we can focus on this cabinet. We can focus on these point lights next. I think that'll be easier to tackle first. So you can see that this point light, it's actually visible and it's intentional also. So the reason that the spotlight is showing like this against the surface as intended is because of the distance from the wall surface. If it was 1000 mm like the other lights, then you would only see a giant spot on the floor. But if you want an effect like this, it should be actually close to the surface on which you're doing it. So I'll just place a ceiling light and show an example. So if I go back to floor plan now, and in a similar way, you can place I'll enable the ceiling reflected plan by going in the bottom right and selecting this. So you'll know actually where to place your ceiling light. You'll have a reference. I select light again. In this case, I have used this ceiling light 1. And I've actually placed it here. I've placed it in this manner. And another easy thing you can use to adjust is instead of changing the position here, X and Z, what is much more intuitive is that you can click on this arrow and you can just drag it. You can click on any of these arrows and you can drag it by a certain distance. Of course, this will not help you put the exact value, but it will at least help you in creating the distance. And to ensure that this is touching the ceiling, of course, you can drag this green arrow and make it snap to the ceiling surface. So that's not an issue. So in this way also, you can make sure of that. Just drag this blue arrow and make sure it just moves backwards. So now that means the spotlight will actually be reflecting on the surface. So after placing the surface in the spotlight, like placing the spotlight near this cabinet, here it would be okay if you adjust the light source in the position because we don't use spotlights that much and they're not very, so default settings for this aren't very important. It's you have more freedom with this and it's less confusing also. So what you can do is when you click on this light fixture, you select lights, ensure that you keep it at spotlight. So now this red sphere appears and this is actually going to indicate in which direction it's pointing at. So you can select this, go to your lights, and intensity is going to be keep it at 1 to 5. In this particular case, I've used it at 3, intensity of 3 only. And actually, in this one, I've used an intensity of 1. And to ensure, you can even change the spot angle. So this is the spot angle basically, the angle of your light, how it is falling. So in this case, I've made the spot angle at 40. But again, that's up to you how much angle you want. So it won't change the direction of the spotlight. It'll only change that triangle of light, that particular angle. In order to change the direction, you have to go to advanced settings of this and you can see the direction option here. So X, Y, and Z will actually indicate what settings you want. So if you want it to point downwards, ensure you keep it at a negative value in the Y axis. And then your direction X, if you put in as 0 and you put your direction Z also as 0, that means it is pointing only downwards in the Y axis. Similarly, if I type in a positive value here, I'll be getting it pointing towards the ceiling. So in that manner, it'll actually help you to determine in which direction it's pointing. So you don't even have to worry about what number to put in. Just worry about whether it is 0, negative, or positive, and in which direction. So keeping a mix of directions will actually help you set up the desired position for your spotlight direction. So that is all for spotlight. Spotlight is pretty simple once you understand these few settings. So for this, you can keep at 1 to 5 if that's not an issue. Now, another thing what you have put in is this emissive slab. So I've not used strip light for this. I have actually made an ordinary slab and I have applied an emissivity to it. So to do that, what I've done is I've selected this, selected create false ceiling, and this is this normal false ceiling slab. I'm going to create a copy of this. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to select add. I'm going to create another rectangle here, and then I'm going to use the offset tool. Or I can create another rectangle like this. It'll fall inside the, just ensure that it falls inside the ceiling. I'm going to select apply for this. So when I go back to designing, right, so you can see that this slab has been added. So you can make this, add any thickness. I've actually filled the space between the ceiling and the actual false ceiling. So when you click on this and select create false ceiling again, here you can, after changing the thickness, etc., like 145 I have done, etc., and I'm keeping the front shift as 0 because it's touching the ceiling. What I've actually done is I've given it an emissive material. So how to do that is you can select any material you want, with preferably a white one, like wall default example. Then you can select, you have to select this clone selected item. And now you can name it light if you want. And you open an option called emissivity. Emissivity will range from 1 to 5 in this case. And what I've actually put for this is 5 because it's from a distance and I want the glow to show up in the ceiling. So I'm keeping at around 5. In other cases, you can even keep around 2 to 3. That is also fine. So now when you look here, this is actually the emissive slab that is being created in your ceiling. So that is going to help you create a solid slab that's emitting light. Last, then about the lights, the cabinet strip lights is another aspect. So what happens is I have
Excuse
added,
me, ma'am.
yes,
Can you explain about that solid wall?
uh,
Like,
this
yeah,
one.
yeah. Just two
Yes, yes.
minutes back, what you told, no? I
Mm-hmm.
have missed that. So please,
Okay, sure.
yeah, ma'am.
So I think you I think you may be knowing how to put a false ceiling slab, right?
No, ma'am. I'm just basic only. I'm
Okay,
just
okay.
listing out what you are telling.
Got it.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to add this all over again. I'm
Okay,
deleting
ma'am.
this.
Oh, yes.
Yes. So basically, I'm creating a false ceiling
Yeah.
in between this slab and this upper slab. This
Okay.
one also I've added in some way, but I'll be adding a false ceiling in between. So what I'll be doing is I click on the ceiling first and I select create false ceiling. Then I select add to create this new slab. I select the rectangle tool and I'm going to make a cavity in it so that it'll only be around the room. So look like this perhaps. It's up to you. And you can even adjust this accordingly. And I'm going to select apply. Now, since this slab, the bottommost slab was 145 away from the actual ceiling, I'm going to make sure that this is going to fill up that space. You can do that if you want, it's up to you. I'm going to keep it at 145 thick. So this is in depth. And the type will be extrusion. It will be extrude only. And the front shift, since it's touching the ceiling as well, it will be 0 only. What I did now was I had selected a wall default. I had selected the material. And I'm actually cloning it to give it a light emitting property.
Okay, ma'am.
Yes. So what I've done is I've selected this and I have create, you can ignore all of this. It does not matter. What really matters is emissivity, which is going to be ranging from 1 to 5,
1 to 5.
right? And
Yes.
this I have placed at 5, but it's up to you which one you can place. So I can, so that's what I've done basically. I'll,
Yes. Thank you, ma'am.
sure, sure. So I'll just place the, yes. So once I go back, I will just be telling about the cabinet strip lights that I've added. A very common issue that is faced by a lot of us is that these strip lights, it may either cause too much glare, it may be the hidden reason why the entire room is full of light, there's too much light in the room and we don't even know where it is coming from. Most of the reasons it's either because something has an emissive property, or it is because the emissive property is very high and it is coming from a place it shouldn't. So many times it'll be from this strip light itself. So how we can avoid that is, first let's focus on how to place the strip light. So we have to click on the cabinet panel for this. We have to click on the panel on which we want to apply the strip light. Click on panel tab here in the left hand icon bar, and in this select strip light. You can click on add here. Then you can choose 30 mm. That is what I used. And now I want to move this to the back. So now you can't, don't click on panel now. You have to, and if you click on panel orientation also, it'll just be shifted to the side. I don't want that either. What I can do instead is I can click on this light itself. For this, you have to go quite close, select furniture light unit, and then Z axis, you can see that it's 240 mm away from the back. I'm going to type in 0. And now you can see it has been shifted all the way from the back. Similarly, if I type in X, if I type in 23 or something, it's shifted in this way. But that won't make any sense at all. So I'm just going to put in 0. Y axis, obviously, it'll either make it go down or go up in the design. Now, a very common mistake that could be done for this is that if you had accidentally, if you click on this and go to furniture light unit, and for fixtures you can put in light sources, so why not for this? So accidentally what we do is we add this, and then the point light is 50, and that is the reason the intensity is 50 for this. It's a point light, and that's why it's creating so much glare. And another thing is that what is recently happening is that even if we brought it down to an intensity of 5, which is the appropriate intensity for a strip light. This is, by the way, when I'm adding a light source. So if I click on this now, there's a big yellow sphere here. What happens in the renders is that a lot of times, at least in the initial view, you can see these spots happening in your renders for the lights. It's the reason is that it is something to do with this sphere. So this yellow sphere. So that is something we avoid. That is something it's best that you avoid. What you can do instead is, instead of adding any light to this, so when I click on furniture light unit and go to this, we should not add anything. We should actually delete even this light source that we have, so that now there's nothing there. But now how do we ensure that that glow is created? We need to make sure that there is some sort of glow happening, right? Even here and here. It just so happens so that this strip light happens to have its own material. We click on this and select it, you can see that a material by default called soft yellow emissive has been applied onto here. So by default, the emissive intensity would be 10. That's the intensity at which you should be keeping it. You should keep it at 10. If you keep it higher, like 23, etc., you will be getting a little bit of a glare. So to get a gentle glow, you can make sure you keep this at 10 and apply to all instances if it's not already the case. So in this manner, you can apply this strip light to all of your panels in this way. And that is how you can create. So you can just simply click on each panel and you can get this property. And to apply the strip light itself, you have to select this and then click on this tab. And don't select any lights. Don't add any lights for this particular case. For ceiling lights, yes, they should have a fixture. But for strip lights in the cabinets, do not do that, because there is an issue that is happening around it, which is these spots. So let's not do that. Now that you've put up your artificial lights, let us tackle the one important thing. So a lot of confusion
Hello, ma'am.
happens around, yes.
Can you repeat it? The strip light, please. Starting how to system.
How to add it or how to
Yeah, how to add the strip light starting. I got them.
okay, so I click on this panel,
Okay.
select this panel tab, click on customize.
Okay.
I click on customize, I select this panel, and I click on this. There's a strip light option. Just select add for this,
Okay.
add it from the carousel. Then go to your, you have to select a strip light itself. Go to
Okay.
furniture light unit. Don't add anything here. Just leave this alone. Just change the
Okay.
position. Make this
Okay.
0,
Okay.
right? And for
Thank
that
you.
glow, yes, no problem. Just one more, just a reminder for that glow. Just open the materials for this and ensure it is at 10, the intensity,
Okay.
right?
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Sure. Now we can move on to a final aspect of this, which is the daylight. How to get the proper background, what is the appropriate background to use for this, and how to get light falling onto this the way it is falling here. So there are many things that you need to actually consider in this case. So I'll just show an example here. So when I go to the pre-settings, when I go to this design, and let's say I'm opening the render tab here, and I click on exterior light. This is what we are going to be looking at now. We have two tabs. One is the environmental map and we have the sunlight. Environmental map is what you can place in order to keep a background for your window. So many of you might be finding that the view outside may be very blue, unnaturally blue, in fact. You will see this with tall trees, garden palm, maybe even your cloud, sky renders, etc., sky dusky. So we have added some more. We have added actually some more field environmental maps, in which case you're getting a white background. One one particular background that I've used for this final design actually. So you can see the difference. In this case, I used a different background and there doesn't seem to be any white light falling. It looks like it's night outside when in fact it isn't. But in this case, I've used a different map. I have used in this case something called countryside lake. So always ensure that you are choosing a background where there is a significant white patch in the panoramic image. So, and also ensure that it has smaller trees. So that's why I chose countryside lake. So you can see in this panorama, they have white. They're mostly like a white shade and very small trees. So it won't be blocking your view of the window. So that's another one thing to consider. Always make sure that your environmental map intensity is 100. Otherwise, it'll look very dull. And the rotation is basically the rotation of your map. So, for example, if your rotation here is at the left, right? If I'm rotating in left, that means this panorama will actually be rotated accordingly, and you'll actually be getting a different view of the same map. Like, I will open another aspect, I'll open another example. This is the same environmental map, but you're getting a different view. This is what happens when you rotate it. So you can actually experiment with different rotations and see what kind of background you're getting. So that's one aspect. So this is environmental map. This has nothing to do with the sunlight. This is just the background image. Keep the intensity of that to 100 and you'll be getting that white colored look. And the rotation is kept from left to right. That is one thing to consider. So, and try not to choose a background with extremely blue color, an extremely blue look. That'll make it look a bit unrealistic. And even if you keep intensity at 100, it'll look very blue outside and not white. Now let's talk about the sunlight settings. So the question is, where do you want the sunlight to fall on in your room? Let's say I want it to fall from where I'm looking at onto these cabinets. That is one example. So you can see it's falling from back to front. So we need to make sure that we are setting the sunlight settings also in that way. So what I do is The first thing we need to do is place a window from where you want the sunlight to fall. In this case, if I go to the ground floor now, I can see I've placed a large window at the back, which doesn't matter because in any case, it will not be visible in your render. This is if you're it's falling from the back. You can even do this for your other windows as well. It depends on your design and how much light you want to fall. But in this case, I wanted to fall from the back, so I've placed a window in the back. And if you can make it as large as possible and make sure that the glass you're using is plain glass. Make sure that you're not using any tinted windows. So you can keep in mind what I had mentioned about plain glass material earlier. But anyway, your windows will have that anyway, so you won't have to change it. Now, the other aspect to consider, the first aspect to think about is your compass. That will actually help you determine where the light is falling from. Let's say that we want our compass, our light to fall from the back, and it is morning, which means in flow plan, I want morning light to fall from this back side, which means at that time the sun will be in the east. So I go to annotate and I select compass and I just place one here. By default, if it would normally be at 0, so it would look like this. But that means the light will now fall from the right side. If you don't want that, you can always click on this compass and set your rotation. Let's say I'm keeping this at 270. Now the east has been rotated to fall from here. That means it'll be falling straight onto these cabinets. You can also play with the rotation if you want. Like if you wanted to fall slightly in a slanted manner, like you can play with the angles between 135 or 180 to 270. I've placed in this case 210. So it's coming a little bit from the left hand side, like from the left corner, like the northeast light is falling into your kitchen and onto your cabinets. You can see that in the same design in the floor plan, this is the angle that I've placed. So it completely depends on where you want the light to fall from. But setting your compass is not enough. Actually, in a similar manner, if you want, if the time is 5 o'clock or something, then it'll be the other way around. You need to rotate in such a way that light is falling from the west. But your compass is not the only thing you should consider. You should also set the time of the day. So when you go to render and again click on the sunlight settings, you can see that under set day or night time, I've set it at 8 o'clock. In your 3D, if I go to view 1 now, I'll just show the effect that it is having. If I go to exterior light, and I'm now, the light is falling from the east, let's say. Let's say the compass this is the east side, and I'm typing instead of 8 a.m., I'm typing in 5 p.m., which is 17 hours. So now you can see the light has shifted. Now you know it is falling from the opposite side. So this will actually help you understand the relationship between the compass and the time. Even if you set it at something like 10 a.m., which is still morning, it will have a significant effect. Why? Because as you approach 12 o'clock, the sun will go like higher and higher. So to ensure that the light actually falls from a low angle, like it is falling here, and not from on the floor or anything like that, it would be better actually if you keep your hours to be anytime from 7 to 8. And in this case, I'm placing this at 8 a.m. So that is what you can consider. So this is 8 a.m. Light is falling from the east. And in terms of the sunlight properties, sunlight intensity, you should keep it at 100. Reason for that is to make the light patterns falling on this to look as crisp as possible. The less of the intensity it is, the more diffuse the light will be. As it is, it's already slightly blurred and diffused because the cabinet's finish is not very glossy. It is somewhat rough. So the light is already getting sort of distributed and split. But to make the sunlight as crisp as possible, you should make a sunlight intensity of 100. Bear in mind that this is just for your interior, not your exterior. So these are the sunlight settings to consider. And the sunlight rotation, you don't have to worry about. It is a bit of a confusing thing to use. It's basically the direction of your compass. So I think for you, what will be easier to adjust is if you select the compass and make your rotations accordingly. So that is about actually setting your light. Now we have actually reached the end of setting up the lights. Now all that is remaining to do.
Sorry, I have a question. You said for the morning, the best time would be 7 to 8.
Yes.
What would be the best for the evening?
So for evening, it depends on, for evening time, it follows the same principle. So if it's evening time and you are keeping this and you want it to fall in the same direction, I'm assuming, right?
Yes.
Yes. So that means now when I'm keeping the exterior light settings, let's say 5 p.m., right? This would be the best time because it's closer to sunset. In the same manner that 7 to 8 a.m. is closer to sunrise. So that means the sun itself will be lower, right? So that was my reasoning behind putting the time closer to either sunrise or sunset. So in this case, 5 p.m. would be pretty appropriate if you are if you want that kind of light. And in addition to that, you need to ensure that your compass is pointing from the west now. This should be west instead because the sun will be in the west. So what that means is, if I select this, it'll basically it'll be in the other way around. I'll just type in minus 210. Sorry, basically it should be pointing from the west, right? So was that part clear?
Yeah.
All right. So you can ensure that, so that is how what you can keep in mind. So settings for evening and morning are pretty similar. Just things to keep in mind is make sure the sun is as close to setting or rising as possible, like the position, and based on that you determine the time. And based on whether it's morning or evening, then you determine where your east or west is going to be pointing at. It all depends on where you want your light to fall from, once again. So these are some simple controls you can keep in mind. So just bear in mind that your sunlight settings and your environmental map are two completely independent settings. They don't depend on each other at all. Now that the lighting settings are done, we need to set a free view, something similar to what we have here. So we can just go briefly over how to set up your camera. When you go to your floor plan, I'm going to press escape for this, and I select in the bottom right, set camera position for render. A camera will appear here. I'm in the kitchen view right now, so it will appear quite close by. So you can actually rotate, you can drag this, and you can see the thumbnail where it is being shifted. So this is basically our version of zooming in the actual 3D
Ma'am,
interface.
excuse
Yes.
me, ma'am. Ma'am, can you repeat how to add that camera? Once again, please.
Yes. So I'll just close it. You're in the floor plan, and in the bottom right, this is the camera button.
Okay.
Once you do that, your camera will appear here.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you.
Yes. So if you rotate this camera, it'll actually rotate to point towards the angle. So this is like the line of sight of your camera. And once you're done setting up that kind of a view, let's say I'm setting up this particular view also, something like this. Then what you can do is, in the right hand side, we have the H controls, which is actually standing for eye level. So it's a height. So it's better to keep it at a human being's eye level. So 1600 is appropriate. And this is the angle. It's basically the tilt of the camera. If I put in something like 24, you can see that it is tilting upwards. But to ensure that your vertical lines look straight in your render and thus more realistic, and not skewed, you can see that you can type in 0 instead. That means your vertical lines will be parallel. And once you are done with that, you can actually go to your 3D. One second. I'll just set up this view.
Ma'am, I wanted to ask how are these reference lines coming, like for the lights?
Yes, I can go over that. So these are construction lines that I put in while setting up the lights. So we can, at the end of this, I can answer your doubt, right?
Yeah, sure.
All right. So for now, I'll just be explaining about this. So once you've set your view in the camera, this is the easiest way to set up. And once you have changed your height here to be like around eye level, etc., then when you go to your 3D, then again you can rotate in any way that you want so that it remains in this way. And in floor plan, you can keep going back and adjusting. You can make the 0, etc., and keep going to your 3D. Once you are happy with this view and you don't want it to get adjusted in any way, what is really important to do is you need to save this view. Whoever is using SketchUp would be familiar with this. It's like setting a scene basically. You go to your bottom left, select this plus icon. You have this click to add new view. So now this new one called view 2 has been added. You basically need to click on settings here and select lock view. So now you can see that the view here is locked. So you can't rotate it or anything. Even if you try going to floor plan, you need to unlock the view in order to switch modes. So this is actually going to help you a lot when you have set the perfect angle and you don't want it to get ruined. So when you go to your free view, you can do whatever you want with you are free to navigate within this in however way. But when you go back to your view 2, you will be returned to this view. Once you're satisfied with this particular view, you can go ahead and select, you can go ahead and select your render icon. Click on the render tab, select render. Don't click on 3D render. This is for the entire project, and it's like it's not a static render basically. It's an interactive one. So render, you have to select render. And for running test renders, HD renders are what you can use. These are free of cost, so you can run as many as you like. You can keep your aspect ratio here to be 1:1 or 16:9. So you just go ahead and select your HD render. If you adjust your camera position here, you can, of course, return back to this. And if you want to fire this render, you can click on HD render. So in the gallery, it will be loading. It'll take around 3 minutes. Since I've not put all of the lights, it will not look like what I've done here. But for reference, this is the complete design with all of its settings. So this is how you run a render after setting a view for it. And once you're done, you not only have the render that is close to what you want, but you can even further post process it. So when you open the gallery in your render, go to gallery, you can choose any of these. Let's say I want to change this, I want to edit this. Click on this 3 dot button and select edit image. This will actually open this in your editor, and you can change things like brightness, contrast, saturation, etc. Saturation will help you remove the brightness and make your design a little more muted. This you can use sparingly and depending on your design. Contrast and brightness also you can use. Contrast, just use it a little bit, but even then it's a bit tricky. Most likely, if you follow the settings as shown, you may not even need to use this. And brightness also you can adjust. Brightness is a more subtle way you can adjust and play with the overall brightness of the image. Sharpness also, it'll actually create a more posterized image. You'll see these white lines being formed. So you can avoid that. And we have temperature. So you can change this will take on a warmer look, like a pinkish tint, and this will give you a bluish tint of the same thing. So this is basically temperature. You can either reset it or you can download it. So once you're done with this, you can download this. So I would suggest that after running multiple HD renders, in order to find out whether it's the one you want or not, once you're satisfied with the overall look away render, then keeping the same settings intact, you can go ahead, click on render, and actually run your 4K render or even FHD. Because in terms of clarity, these two renders are what are fit for clients. If you can see here, this is an HD render, and if you zoom into this, it gets more blurred and pixelated. But 4K will not have that. Even full HD will not really have that.
मैम आपने इसके फुल एचडी भी रेंडर किए हैं या नहीं अभी?
This one is HD. I've not run any full HD ones yet. So basically, what you're seeing in this collateral, etc., these very clear ones,
Mhm.
this is 4K. You can
This
see
is
how
4K.
crisp. Yes, yes. And this was in the initial stages.
Okay.
Once you download it, actually, it'll be more clear. But this is already pretty clear. Like in terms, you can see that the lines are not blurring much.
मैम हमारे इधर तो दिखाई दे रही है blurring. These are blurring my side.
Okay, it might be the
Maybe-
screen itself.
Maybe it's on
Mhm.
because we are on a meeting. That's why screen may not be visible properly this side.
Actually be better for you to download the image and then you'll actually be getting the 4K. This is just a preview. So even if you had opened it in your gallery,
Mm-hmm.
so in your 4K, you will be getting these images. But 4K will take up credits, so always make sure you're HD first. And
Could you
then once
share these images so that we can see how the result is?
absolutely. So but after this webinar, I can attach these images and their different outputs, 4K, FHD, etc. It'll help you out. And
Mhm.
I'll attach it as part of the folder. Is that fine?
Okay, fine. Thank you.
All right, great. So now that we have covered up post-processing, etc., this will actually bring us to the end of the webinar settings, thumb rules, etc., troubleshooting and all that. So if there are any questions that you may have, now is a good time to ask.
Ma'am, will you show me how to add the grid one more time?
Yes. So setting up a grid is a trick that you can use to determine the spacing for your lights. I'll just delete these existing ones that I have. I'll just delete this one by one. So we have an option called, we have the draw tool, which is not at all related to the rendering tools, but it'll help you create your lines. So you have to select your draw tool once you're in your flow plan. Select your draw tool here, select construction lines. This is the icon called adding construction lines. Now in AutoCAD, you may be familiar, if you use AutoCAD, you might be familiar with something called XY lines. It works in the same manner. So just click on one point. I'm starting from these cabinets because in this case, but you can start from anywhere that you want, depending on where your light is from your surface. So now I click on one point and you can determine the angle. You can see the angle is showing up here. If I type in 0, or you can click on the next line, you'll be
Ma'am,
getting one line like this.
This is grid line or this is reference line?
It's a reference line only. Grid lines are different.
Okay, where is grid line? Could you
This is
please
the
show
grid
me?
line.
Sorry,
So if you
reference line. Where is reference line?
this is the reference line. It's called add construction
Okay,
line.
it's construction line. Okay.
Yes, yes, correct. So these will be helpful for creating like a rough grid, not working drawing grids, but something like this you're planning out. Now I'm selecting construction line again, and I'm making a vertical one, clicking from one point and clicking on the next point. Now, how do I make this grid? Select the grid, select the line, type in array. It's a shortcut. You can type this randomly like you would in AutoCAD. And To ensure that there's a distance of 1000, select multiply straight fixed distance, and then make sure that this can be more than this also, but 1000 also you can keep just as a thumb, like a placeholder. So now when you click on this line and you move your mouse downwards, you can see that multiple lines can be formed, but with a spacing of 1000 always. Then you can click anywhere to stop this. And then this is one set of grid lines. Now you can proceed to do this with your other line as well. Select array, ensure that it's at multiply fixed distance, and this is 1000. Because remember, it is the distance that you want to keep as constant. And then move your mouse and select on the screen. Now you have created your grid.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you.
No problem.
हेलो
I think, yes.
सॉरी मैम डिस्टर्ब करने के लिए ये वीडियो आप लास्ट में शेयर करोगे ना
Yes. This is under record and it will be shared after this is over.
ओके थैंक यू
All right. Yes.
मैम जो अपनी यूनिट्स होती है
Mhm.
these are in MMs, or if you want to display both the units, that is feet and inches, and primary unit is mm, would we do this in?
You can display only one unit at a time, but you can switch between feet and inches at any point. So now if I change the project units and change it to feet, and I close this, and let's say I want to array this again, you can see that you can keep the distances now changed. The units have changed.
We're talking about the dimensioning.
Dimensioning.
Yes.
Okay, so no. So feet and inches, they don't exist together. So if I put a dimension, this I'll just align this, or I'll just
I have seen this most of the time. These dimensioning doesn't work, as it is not working on construction lines.
so yes, that is something that is under development. Construction lines as of now are considered as this thing, but it's on grid lines.
Okay.
Yes, so grid lines are different because they are used for working drawings and they are important. So, but for construction lines, as of now, they don't recognize them. And as you can see for this, you can keep the units to be either mm or
Yeah.
point.
What does point mean?
Point basically means if you select this, it will just increase in proportion. It should just make sure it is readable on your interface screen. But for your
Okay.
drawings, it is not advisable. So you can keep it at mm.
And ma'am, we have selected the units mm, but in dimensioning it is showing 13 feet and something inches. How is this?
That you can check. We can check with that in the later. So this is, I'm assuming, for one of your designs, right?
Ma'am,
Or all of them?
did you change it right now? 13 feet?
No, I have. Okay, this one, right?
Because you are working in mm and it is showing in feet.
Yes,
How-
because the project units I've changed to feet and inches.
Okay. Project unit.
Yes, actually, yes, that is a bit of a UI
PR
confusion. Thank you for
PR,
pointing that
PR
out.
is project unit. Shortcut.
Yes, PR is project units. Yes, you can even select view and you can actually click on. You can click on project units here. But definitely what you mentioned is correct. I'll keep that in mind. When we are in project units of feet and inches, our font also, our dimension font should also be in that same unit.
Yes, ma'am.
All right.
Another point is that ma'am, when we have created slab of any floor, how can we? I don't know how to draw false ceiling. Could you please show me something about it? How can we do ceiling part?
That, if
Multiple
you don't
levels.
mind, I can take up at towards the end. So As of now, we are taking for rendering. We're taking mostly for rendering. So at the end, if you still have the doubt, I can address it. All right.
Ma'am, I'm talking about multiple levels. If I want to create multiple levels plus the curves in the ceilings, is it
For
possible?
multiple levels, yes. So for what
Multiple levels and curves in the ceiling, dome shape curves.
dome
I
shaped
don't
curves,
want, yes.
no. So dome shaped curves would not be possible. But what we do have, which is possible, are multiple levels for these ceilings.
Basically, I'm talking about if we want to draw any classical theme for the ceiling, how could we
And
do it?
so we have these flat ceilings. So dome as of now is not possible, creating domes or any sort of parametric shape for the ceiling.
Okay.
Yes, only the
Let's
flat
talk.
surface you can create curves on that.
Okay. Let's do it later at the end of the session.
All
Ceiling.
right.
Okay, ma'am.
John,
All
could
right.
you show how to remove those kind of spots from a ceiling light that fall on the walls?
Yes.
Is
So
that
you
based
mean
on the wall texture, basically, like the glossiness of the wall?
actually it's based on two things. Like you are referring to this, of course, right?
Yes, yes, yes.
So one main reason is that the wall is by default it is given a specular property, which to avoid that we generally change the roughness to completely 1 and the specular to 0. So in presettings, if I were to click on, if I were to open this materials here, I'm keeping, generally roughness is kept at 1 and the specular is kept at 0. So that is one aspect. And you should make sure you keep it like that so that similar to this wooden pattern and this flooring, those unsightly spots do not appear. But what is even more important is that no matter how much roughness you give to this wall, the spots will appear if you don't ensure proper spacing of light, which is why it is important to keep a spacing of at least 1000 mm.
Understood. And do you think that would be the same reason why those spots are coming on cabinetry as well, due to the spacing of the lights?
You mean these strip lights, correct? Those dark spots being formed?
Yeah, no, not these ones. For example, with the same kind of ceiling lights, those spots that are appearing on the walls, they're also appearing on the cabinets. They're not in yours actually, but when I'm
Okay.
rendering mine, these same kind of spots, maybe because the cabinet has a glossy finish, those spots are
Mhm.
also showing on that. Do you think that could be because of the spacing of the lights?
It might possibly be for several reasons. So you're saying you're using a strip light for this.
No, like ceiling lights.
Okay.
Ceiling lights when they have a drop down, right? And
Yes.
somehow when I'm rendering the image, just like we have those spots coming on the walls, they're also showing up on the cabinetry. Actually, you might
Got
actually
it.
see it in
Yes,
this
yes.
render of yours also, like near the handles of the wall units, the
Right.
small
So,
circular dots.
yes, yes. So you're saying it would appear on the cabinets also. Yes, it's the exact same reason.
Okay.
So no matter what is the um, property of the cabinet, you can keep it at whatever you like. But in order to avoid the spots being shown, it'll keep it at 1000 mm from the nearest surface. But having said that, if it is still appearing, actually the light sources spots is actually a feature that's being worked on to ensure that they don't get recognized in the render. It just shows as diffuse light.
Yeah,
So
that was
I
the
will,
mistake,
yeah.
like the light wasn't diffusing as well as it should be.
Yes, yes. I will, of course, need to closer look at the render and what kind of design, like what kind of ceiling lights you have put in and how you have done it to really determine the cause. But these are the likely reasons, and it's also an issue on the side of the software as well, which is being worked on. As you can see, these spots may be formed because of that very issue.
Understood. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Ma'am, ma'am,
Yes, yes. Tell me.
can we change the strip light colors?
You can the strip light colors. So you can actually, it depends whether it's a cove light or it's a strip light, but it won't actually have create much of a difference. So in this case, you can see for this cove light, I've copied a white property, a white colored emissive
Yeah, ma'am, not cool.
material.
It's which you have given in the wall cabinets.
This one, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Which
Okay,
comes
so
only in white, right?
actually the base color used was yellow, and it is actually still showing up as a white in color,
Yeah, but
a
how to
whitish.
change that color strip light?
So if you select, you can try this, but I'm not sure how much it will work.
Okay.
Uh, you can assign this a different color material altogether. You can select this strip light,
Mm-hmm.
go to furniture light unit, and go to materials and meshes. This is actually where you'll see a soft yellow emissive.
Yeah, I tried this, ma'am. I changed this color, but it is not show. It's not showing that light color. It's showing just a material which is on that cube. That color will
Understood.
change, not light color.
Got it, got it.
Yeah.
That is a possible issue, because I'm
Okay.
very well aware that if you apply an emissivity to any color, right, it would be mostly white only. That I can check with the team as well.
Okay. Sure.
Yes.
Thank you.
May I know which organization you are from so that I can check?
Yeah, my name is Latika from Bliss Space.
From Play Space,
No, Bliss Space. Yeah.
Bliss Space,
Yeah.
BLISS.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
So strip light color change.
Yeah.
Yes, I'll keep that in mind. I'll just take it up with the team. All right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure. Thank
All
you.
right.
Hi, ma'am.
Hi. Yes.
Ma'am, can you just repeat the material one, ma'am, for the cabinets, starting for the laminate again?
Yes. Yes. You mean these, right?
Yeah, cabinet.
Yes. What I'd applied was actually, if you select this cabinet, and
Okay.
to be clear, you are clear on how it is applied to the shutter, etc., right?
Yeah, that I know. Just I want
Okay.
to.
But to open the material properties of this, you need to go to global preference and settings. Here we
Okay.
have this icon called materials.
Okay.
Here we have this picker tool. It's called the material property picker.
Okay.
So you select this, then click on the material whose property you want to check out, and you will be seeing these various properties. So what you need to think about for laminates, if you want this kind of a finish at least, you can keep the default settings. These are
Okay.
default settings. You
Okay.
can consider like that.
If I want to increase the glossiness or the roughness of that, ma'am.
Then, so it depends on the look that you want. So if you want to increase your glossiness, let's say you want it to be something like this,
Yes, ma'am.
then maybe what I had used was, I didn't make it very glossy. I made it perhaps zero point 0.5 this,
Okay.
and the
Okay.
roughness I made this half of this. I made it 0.2.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
But to make it ultra glossy, I can just open this rendering PPT, and this will actually help you get a better idea. So this is if one property is full and the others are completely zero. So this is full specular, this is
Okay.
full roughness, and this is
Okay.
full metalness,
Metalist. Okay.
right?
Yeah,
So you
got
can use a combination for various things. And with this in mind and what I had shown in mind, you can determine the gloss that you want.
it. Okay. Thank you.
Sure. Okay. Priyanshi Dixit wanted to know if we have island in between, but we want to render of a wall, how to hide it. Are you there, Priyanshi ma'am? Okay. So if you don't mind, if you have an island in between, so can you explain what exactly you mean by that? I didn't quite understand. So you want to hide the island table basically, correct? Okay. So to hide any object, if you want to hide any kind of object, you don't want, suppose we have a table, this cabinet is something we want to hide. This, by the way, applies to anything here. So if we select this and we have layers here in the global preference and settings, we have this option called layer sets. So these will actually contain all the layers we have, and by default, you will be given a layer called hidden. You can create layers also, but this is what we have already, so you can keep that in mind. So let's say we want to hide this cabinet. If you go to customize here, you can see that the drawing layer used is furniture, and this furniture layer is for everything. So you need to actually assign it to a layer which you're going to hide. So just open this category, scroll down and select the, assign it to a new layer, let's say hidden, and then we go to the layer sets and we hide this layer by clicking on this eye icon. Now you can see this cabinet has been completely hidden. You can rehide it also. You can unhide this as well. Does that solve it out? So yes, you can hide your wall also to answer that. So you just have to open that wall and go click on wall, drawing layer, once again assign it to the layer that you want to hide and then hide it. You can, this applies to any element in Infurnia. All right. Someone wanted to know how Cove Light is created. SK Maitapalli. Are you there? Okay. So how I've created a ceiling Cove Light. So I will just show from scratch how it is created. So let's say I'm just making a separate room in this case. I'm going to ground floor. Going to walls. And I'm creating an ordinary ceiling. I go to room 2 and I'm going to add a normal ceiling here. And I apply this. I go to 3D. So now how to create multiple layers of ceiling, which is the cove light as well as the peripheral slab. What I'm doing is I click on the ceiling. I select false ceiling in the left hand panel. Now I have the ceiling profile. I select add. I create one rectangle here. This is going to be my emissive slab. This is going to be the slab emitting light. I will offset this. I click on copy in this offset panel. And then I just click on the shape and I
Ma'am,
select.
could you please repeat, as there was a network problem? I couldn't hear you.
Okay, I'm basically just creating the ceiling. So I click on add here, right? And I'm creating a rectangle here. Now I create another rectangle inside. So it'll create a slab in the periphery. I apply this. This is the one that's going to be emitting light. I'll just change the project units. So what happens when I go back to designing? So this has been basically created, which you can edit also. So this project units, if I select here, I go to I just change this to mm. This is just for my convenience. I go back to create false ceiling to edit this. Select the shape, and I'm going to create. I'm going to make this a thickness of 150, let's say. You can make this any shape that you want, but I'm making it 150 thickness. Front shift, it's touching the ceiling and it's coming in between that and the actual false ceiling. So it's going to be 0 itself. which means now it will look like this. That is one. Now if I go to false ceiling, now I assign this an emissive material, which means I click on I clone selected item and I make the emissivity as 5, 1 to 5. I'm keeping it at 2. You can keep it in that range, and you can name this also if you want. And you can select clone and apply. So now this material called light is added, which in the render it will show up in that way. And
It's not showing cove light.
in the render, if I run the render, this slab will emit light. In the design, it will not emit light.
It will emit a light towards the ceiling.
It will emit a glow. So
It will
it will
emit a glow towards the ceiling, not towards the floor.
no, it's not. This is not like a point light. It'll emit a slight amount of light in all directions in the same way that you can see here. It's emitting light everywhere. It's like a glowing slab.
No, it is emitting light towards the ceiling. It is not emitting light towards the floor. Is it so that you have shown to us?
Because it is closer to the ceiling, that's it is emitting a slight amount of light in all directions. Since it is touching the ceiling, it will appear like it is the ceiling is glowing. So you can see actually this whole white thing is a slab.
Okay. And what is
Yes.
this brown thing? How have you created this brown thing?
This slab,
Yes, yes.
that is my next step. I'll just show that.
Okay.
This is the light emitting slab. When I click on this and I create false ceiling again, now I'm creating another slab. I'm selecting add. I select rectangle. I create another rectangle in like this and
Sorry,
I
ma'am.
select apply. Okay. Then what I'm doing now is if I go back, you can see that this is also touching the ceiling, but I don't want that. I want it to be lowered down. So
Yes,
I,
yes, yes, yes,
I
yes.
click on create false ceiling. I select this. Now the front shift is important here. So since the thickness of that light slab was 150, I'm going to shift it towards the front by 150. In the front shift, I'm typing it. So now it has experienced a drop.
Okay.
So that is how it is being made. And once you select this and go to create false ceiling, you can assign this any shape, any color that you want. Wall default. I'm just giving this like Siberian oak color. And if you want to see that light slab, you can click on order and you can select move down. This will not change the actual position of the slab. It's just for your visibility.
In this mode, can we see layout also or
Not
floor plan?
not in this mode. No, this will only present you the ceiling profile.
Okay.
Yes. But if you want to see how it looks in your floor plan, you can go to your floor plan and you can
Okay.
select you can select enable reflected ceiling plan view and you can see what it looks like here.
No, will it show our furniture layout also in this
Yes,
floor plan?
yes, this room is empty. I'll just
Okay.
show the
Okay.
other
Okay.
one.
Got it. Got it.
Yes, you can see this, right?
Okay. Got it.
So that is how Cove Light peripheral slab is created. We have an article available on the same if you want further clarity. So I hope that was clear to everyone.
Yes,
All
it's
right.
good. Thank you.
And yes, Shri versus Interiors has raised a hand. Yes, tell me. Are you there? Okay. So he
Yes,
doesn't
ma'am.
seem. Are you there?
Can
Are you from Shri versus Interiors?
yes, yes.
Hi, yes, Vishnu, tell me.
Can I share my screen?
Okay, go ahead. Yes, I'll just stop presenting mine. Yes, your screen is visible. You're not audible in case you're saying something.
Sorry, ma'am. In this wooden wrappers, I want to apply glass, ma'am. How can I apply that?
You want to apply glass on top
Glass.
of this.
Yes, ma'am. At,
You
at the top or and here also, ma'am.
Yes, that actually depends on how you've applied the other things as well. Can you select it once so that I can see what exactly it is?
Yeah.
Okay, it's a false ceiling. If you
Yes,
can,
it's a false ceiling. You
Mhm.
can apply it from this wall.
Okay, yes, that is definitely possible.
Yeah.
So what you can do is, I'll just show. I can just present my screen actually.
Yeah, yeah, sure. Okay.
So it's kind of a lacquered glass look that you're going for.
Yeah, yeah. That's that like.
Let's go to our room 2 for this. So let's say I want to create a glass here, right?
Yes, ma'am.
So basically, I click on this, I select create false ceiling, and now I want this to be at the same level as this wooden part. So I just keep that in mind.
Your screen is not visible.
Screen on visible.
Oh, sorry. I'll just share it. Sorry. Yes, so this is what I meant. So did you, shall I show you how we can apply glass here? So that I can apply that same principle? It's visible, right?
Yes, ma'am.
So this is a false ceiling, for example, I've created. By the way, the same principle applies for your wall tiling and cutting tool. You can use the same steps. So when you select this and you go to create false ceiling, you just need to add another shape and assign it a glass material. So to do that, you select add and draw your rectangle. Then you select apply. Now I want this to be in the exact same level as this and the same thickness also. So I select the slab, I check the properties here, depth and front shift, etc. And I apply the same thing here. Depth is same, front shift needs to be 150. But now I need to change this to glass. How do I do that? I select fetch from store once I click on this shape and I go to wall tiles. I click on this drop down menu and I select glass. You can choose from the glass categories available. You can choose something maybe in like black or plain glass, etc. Just an indicator as to whether it'll be visible to you or not. I can go back and you can see this black glass has been applied.
Now, ma'am, we can give the for the black glass some shapes, ma'am, like a rectangle,
Yes,
triangle shape, like that.
yes. So what you mean is like some triangular shapes for
Yeah,
black
yeah,
glass, right?
yeah.
Yes, you can. If instead of this, selected, I deleted this and I selected add again. And I make user line tools to create a rectangle like this. I mean, triangle like this. Even a random triangle I'm creating. I'm just making random ones like this. I select apply, put in the same properties, change the color to black glass. And now you can see it has been added like this.
Okay. Which shape we want, we have to draw with help of line that will convert to the glass.
Either with line or with your arc tools. So we can create
Yeah.
any kind of shape. If you want to change the same shape, again go to create false ceiling, select the shape and select edit shape. By the way, you can even create holes in your existing shapes as well. This will actually help you, um, just to show you an idea
Yeah.
of what all we can do,
Yeah. Okay.
right? So I guess that was clear.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
All right. All right. Anybody else with rendering doubts? Yes, tell me. Yes, Ambika. Are you there? If you're speaking, you're on mute.
Okay. Yeah. Hello.
Hello,
Hello,
yes.
ma'am. Yeah. And can you show me as a lacquer glass, ma'am? Is it for the same scene? What you have shown now for the glass one? How can we make a glossy as a lacquer?
How to make a glass look?
Yeah, like a reflection, like a lacquer glass. Yes.
Yes. So this is for which surface?
For the same, ma'am. For the
Laminates.
ceiling, yeah.
In that case, what you can do is I'll go to this room. You want to give this like a very glossy look, right?
Yeah, yeah, lacquer glass texture.
Yes. You can just click on this, open the properties for this, and make specular 1
Okay.
and roughness is 0. That is all that you need to do, and then you can apply to all instances.
Okay. Thank you.
All right.
Hello. Hello, ma'am.
Yes.
Hello. Yeah. Just now you shown for the ceiling, the glass one.
Hmm.
We can same apply for that also for the glass ceiling, like a
So
lacquer glass for the ceiling.
for the shutter, on top of the
For the
shutter,
shutter, no, no, top of the shutter you just shown me for the ceiling purpose. I must.
ceiling purpose, yes, you can apply
Same.
glass on it. And even if you apply the same materials as you do on this, then you don't even
Okay.
have to apply the glass.
Okay. You can directly apply the same property for that, right?
Exactly. It applies for everything. If you open this property here, this is
Okay.
for Arctic white. You can change this to 1 and 0.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, ma'am.
All right. I think unless anybody else wants to ask any doubt, then I think we can we do renders in night light? Yes. So to answer your question, we have night environmental maps as well. So here we have exterior light settings for we have Satara night, we have open field night. So these are the two maps that you can use, and it'll be dark outside. And in that case, the sunlight you can keep at 6 o'clock. So that would be 18 hours. So now everything will become dark. So the light outside will not come into the room, and that means you won't have to worry about setting up your sunlight settings and all that, because it is anyway a night view. All you will then need to control are the artificial light settings that are coming up inside your room, like your ceiling lights, your cabinet lights, etc. So you can absolutely put night settings, and you can put daytime settings also. Even if you use a normal environmental map like this and you put 6 o'clock here, you will be getting a nighttime view. So does that answer your question?
Hello, ma'am.
Yes.
Can you show me the preview of that, ma'am? Just what else changes done for the setting? Preview of this for the night
Uh, for which light?
night light. Just preview of that.
Okay, we can try it here. So I'll just try it in. Let me just check if we have one ready here. That's usually not the case because it would not require any daylight. So if I click here and I'll just try running a render for this.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll just click on this, go to sunlight, put it at 18 and run a render. Then render preview, you can try this time of day at any of your renders, and you can open your render preview here, and you'll have to wait for a few seconds before it turns up.
Okay.
But yes, you can try this on any of your renders, but you'll just have to worry about the time of day and the lights inside of your room. You won't have to worry about your sunlight coming outside. It will anyway not happen. It's nighttime.
Okay.
Okay. Shri versus interiors.
Yes, ma'am. One more dot I want.
Okay.
Can I share my screen to explain?
Okay.
Yes, ma'am. For this, here is raptors like is there, ma'am? These raptors I have to paste in inside the ceiling, ma'am. Now it was outside the ceiling. You have to see this.
Okay. You want to paste it inside the ceiling.
Inside the ceiling, ma'am. How can I do that?
I'm not exactly sure what you meant. So right now it is these wooden louvers. They are
Yes,
sticking at the
ma'am.
bottom of the ceiling.
Yes, ma'am.
How far do you want to
Deep,
shift it upwards?
I want to paste it in outside, ma'am. Like extruding out upside and paste it in.
Okay. So in any case, you have to click on create false ceiling.
Yes, ma'am.
By the way, this one you just wanted to go a little bit inside the ceiling slab, right?
Yeah, yeah, ma'am.
Okay. Yes, yes.
Not little bit, ma'am. I want to total keep it inside and I want to give in that rectangle shape to profile light, ma'am.
Okay. Okay, fine.
Yeah.
So you don't want this to be seen at all.
Yes, ma'am.
So yes, so then you can just click on this, go to click on create false ceiling in the left hand panel,
Yes, ma'am.
and this is you can select all of these. You can do window select.
Yes, ma'am.
Select slabs at the bottom at the left hand panel.
Okay, ma'am.
So elevation of these slabs is 125. Just try selecting one of those louvers. I just want to see what is the difference of the properties that come up here. Okay, so it's completely different.
Yeah.
Ideally, you should, instead of copying and editing this, you should do this in the sketch mode itself so that when you go out, all these louvers will be treated as one thing. So then
Okay.
that whole thing, you can keep the depth at 50, that is the depth of your this thing, and front shift, make it minus 50. I think
Yeah,
that's
ma'am.
what you
Okay.
want. You want it to go up by that much.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Unexpected.
Then you can go back to designing. That means one of your slabs would have gone up,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, okay. I got that.
right? It's there.
Yeah, it's okay, but ma'am, I want these all rectangle shape I have inside, ma'am. To extrude inside, and I have to keep that inside. I have to keep the wrappers.
So I'm still not understanding. So you don't want these to be visible at all. Do you have any reference image of what you are talking about?
Not like reference, ma'am. Just how can I'm thinking is I want this shape, ma'am, for this shape, this part of whole part we have to go inside the ceiling, and we have to keep these raptors inside the ceiling, and this vertical will be in this vertical place to keep profile like now. That like I'm asking inside any
Okay,
differences.
okay. So basically, you're fine. I'll just share my screen.
Yeah.
So I'll just delete this. I'm gonna delete all of this,
Yes.
and I'll add those louvers that you have done, like this.
Yeah.
And what I'm going to do is I'm going to array this.
Okay. Mhm.
Fixed copy 10, let's say. So now you'd be getting something like this, which,
Ah, yes, ma'am. I want like this inside total part.
oh, so you just wanted it to be a little bit thick. Like, meaning what you had done was you had made it 50 and it is this much.
Yeah. Okay.
And now if I selected this and made this 20. I reduced the depth to be 20.
Yeah.
So now the total depth of this is thickness of this is reduced.
Yeah.
Is this what you meant?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Okay.
Okay,
Okay.
okay.
I can understand.
Right. If that's understood, yeah, that's good. All right. I think then we can close for today, unless anybody else has any doubts. All right. So I think that would bring us to the end of this webinar in that case. So thank you everyone for joining. I hope that this has answered most of your troubleshooting questions, especially for creating like yellowish renders and other such problems you may be facing. I hope you have noted down all the shortcuts and hacks for settings that you have used for different materials. You can use this in your future designs as well.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.